So this is the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, and it's one of the 4 phones Samsung announced at the start of February. Now, I've got to be honest with you, I haven't daily driven a Samsung phone in quite some time, but a little while ago, I said goodbye to my Pixel 4 XL and hello to the S20 Plus, and I have been, and I'm still currently using it as my daily driver. And so in this video, I'm going to give you my exact thoughts on Samsung's latest and greatest, and also whether or not you should consider picking it up. So let's cut the intro and get straight in. For a while now, Samsung has kind of been the benchmark in terms of design, and when you spend lots of money on one of their high-end flagships, you certainly feel like they repay you in the way that the phone looks and feels in the hand, and it is absolutely no different with the S20 Plus. As always, you've got this pretty much all glass design front and back, save for the metal rails around the edge. And this year, the S20 lineup has been more about refinement rather than huge changes. So things like the charging port, the speaker grille, and the microphone on the bottom all now lining up, or the screen becoming slightly less curved than previous years, or even the removal of the dedicated Bixby button. These all feel like refinements over the last few phones that Samsung have released. Where the biggest change comes in terms of design though is that display, and if having hands down the best display on the market is your number one priority, then this phone is without a doubt definitely for you. Samsung have not only now joined the high refresh rate party, they've absolutely demolished the doors down upon entry. That said, I will say 120Hz does not feel like that big of a difference compared to the 90Hz panels found on the Pixel 4 and the OnePlus 7 devices. So don't let these extra frames put you off from buying one of those phones. But that said, it is certainly nice to have the best of the best here with the S20 Plus. Keep in mind, the S20 lineup of phones do not come with 120Hz enabled out of the box. And so this is something that you're definitely going to want to jump in and change if you've pre-ordered this phone, even just to try it out, because it will make things feel buttery smooth, which I think we can all agree is how we want our phones to feel. That being said, there is certainly a huge difference compared to 60Hz panels, and the way that you appreciate this is by enabling 120Hz for a day or two and then switching back to 60Hz. It feels like lag city and is honestly something I would avoid switching to at all costs. Now, aside from the high refresh rate, you're also getting one of the brightest panels available on the market, making it really great for outdoor use. That said, if the phone does not detect that you're in a high brightness environment, it actually won't let you set the phone to its maximum high brightness mode. And this can be a bit frustrating, let's say if you're in a car where the phone thinks you're pretty much indoors, but outside it's really bright and you're wearing your sunglasses, and all of a sudden you can't set the phone to its maximum brightness. That said, it is nice that when we are actually outside and in direct sunlight, the phone will crank right up and it's pretty easy to see. It's also one of the sharpest panels you can get with a 1440p QHD resolution, although keep in mind the screen resolution does cap out at 1080p if you have 120Hz enabled, which to be honest should be all of us. So those extra pixels do feel somewhat wasted, but at least we have the option. It would be nice to be able to use the phone and experience the display at full resolution with 120Hz enabled. I know it would probably have a huge impact on the battery life, but at least having the option there would be a nice addition, because in all honesty, I can't really see many people using this phone at 60Hz and QHD. So hopefully we'll see that in a future software update. Now, Samsung has kept things relatively safe, I'll say, by staying with the hole punch design for the selfie camera on the front of the phone. But this year, like their previous Note 10 lineup, they've moved the hole punch to the middle. Now, I was actually quite surprised at how much I actually noticed the hole punch in my first week or so of using this phone. I think I've become so accustomed to using phones without notches or hole punches over the last 6 months or so. And so there was a little bit of an adjustment period needed, but as expected, you do start to get used to it and it eventually fades away as you become more and more accustomed to it. That said, I would really like to see Samsung take the plunge either later this year with the Note 20 lineup or with next year's lineup of phones and move to under display technology so that we can start enjoying their version of a truly notchless full screen phone. But at least staying with the hole punch design means that IP68 rating stays intact, which we assume is why OnePlus is moving towards the hole punch design with their OnePlus 8 lineup to be able to gain that IP68 rating. So at least we can be assured that our phones can get a little bit wet without it being an issue at all. Now, whilst this is definitely a decently sized phone at 6.7 inches, because Samsung have gone with a 20:9 display aspect ratio, it does actually make the phone feel fairly slim in the hands and actually pretty far from bulky. That said, because it is one of the tallest phones you can get, it does make one-handed use a pretty laughable suggestion. Now, Samsung have attempted to combat this by developing their software around being more one-handed friendly, and there's definitely lots of that on show throughout the software experience, but there's still lots of places where I feel like I still need to use two hands. So reaching for the settings icon in the quick settings panel, or turning up and down the volume, or searching for applications in the app drawer, they're still all horrible for one-handed use. Now, I'll talk more about the software a little bit later on, but one thing's for sure, the super tall display and glass sandwich design make the S20 lineup feel like one of the most at-risk phones that you can own. And so if you've just spent over $1,000 on one of these fancy new phones, then you should definitely think about picking up a case from channel sponsor ESR. Their lineup of cases are super grippy and protective, and they're also crystal clear with a yellow resistant design, meaning you get to still enjoy the beautiful looks of that shiny new phone that you've just purchased, all whilst being covered should you accidentally drop it. Each of their cases have this really form-fitting design, so they don't add a lot of bulk to your phone. They also support wireless charging, and I've got to say, I really dig their metal kickstand case, which is still clean and minimal, but it also allows you to conveniently prop up your phone for improved media consumption. They do also offer premium leather and colored matte finished cases if you're looking to change things up, and all of these cases are available for a huge collection of phones, so if you're looking to pick one up, then I'll leave a link to them below. Now, just before we wrap up our conversation around design, I do also want to mention the haptic motor and the fingerprint sensor. So in terms of haptics, the benchmark for a long time has been the iPhone lineup, with a fairly close second being the impressive haptics on the Pixel lineup. And I've spoken about this before, but good haptics can often be the difference between a phone feeling high quality and premium, or low budget and cheap. Luckily, the haptic motor on the S20 lineup is very decent, to say the least. I'd say it's still not quite as good as what we have on the iPhone or Pixel phones, but at least it doesn't feel like trash, which is something Samsung phones have been guilty of in the past. That said, at this price point, I kind of feel like it should be the best. Samsung has gone all in so many other areas, why not the haptic motor as well? And then we have that ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, and I've been a naysayer of in-display fingerprint sensors for a very long time, and the sensor in the S20 Plus does not change my opinion on the matter at all. It's not horrible, it works most of the time, but it's not nearly as fast or reliable as a capacitive fingerprint sensor, and it does feel like you have to land your finger on a very precise point for it to work flawlessly, which is actually a serious learning curve. Believe it or not, it actually makes me miss my Pixel 4, which doesn't even have a fingerprint sensor. Even though Samsung have their own version of Face Unlock, I guess because they haven't gone all in on it with depth sensors and software built around it, using their version of Face Unlock feels lackluster, to say the least. In fact, it actually kind of gets in the way of me unlocking my phone with my fingerprint, in that it takes long enough to scan my face that I feel like I need to get my fingerprint involved, but then it does catch up and successfully scan my face, but then the option to log in with my fingerprint is gone, and so now I can't quickly unlock my phone anymore. Now, I could of course disable the stay on lock screen option found in the face recognition settings, but disabling this would mean I rarely get to see my lock screen, and I like seeing my lock screen to check the time and to have a brief view of my notifications, so this isn't something that I really want to do. So this feels like something Samsung could easily fix with a software update, simply by not removing the option to log in with your fingerprint if it has already successfully scanned your face. But all that to say, I still don't love in-display fingerprint sensors. It feels like a stopgap solution on the S20 Plus, and it just makes me excited for the day where all phones have really solid under-display face unlock scanners that work with every app on the Play Store. Now, I know I said that the curve on this display has been minimized a bit compared to previous Samsung flagships, but there is still enough of a curve for me to notice that the edge rejection isn't too crash hot. Even my wife picked up on this, and she found that she couldn't use the phone properly without intentionally readjusting the position of her palm, which had been resting on the side of the display. I've noticed it as well, and so whilst it's not horrible, there is a bit of a learning curve there, and it's something to be aware of as well. One thing that does really impress me though is that even with the outrageously slim bezels, which leave seemingly no room for a speaker on the front of the phone, the speaker performance is really decent, and we still get that dual speaker setup with additional volume and high end being provided by the front facing speaker, and they end up sounding really nice. So look, if you're interested in having a phone that has perhaps the best build quality and design available at this current time, then the S20 lineup is not going to disappoint. They're beautiful phones, they feel super premium in the hand, and it's just as well given the premium price tags to go with. Now that said, I've always said that the design of a phone really only impacts how you enjoy using it in the first week, maybe 2 or 3 at most, but then after that, it's all about the performance. And so let's chat about how this phone performs. Firstly, in terms of speed and fluidity, this phone has rarely skipped a beat, and you definitely hope so given it's this early in its life, but you can certainly tell that this phone is using all of the latest specs. There are pretty much no hiccups that I've personally experienced in terms of animations and moving around the OS, and that 120Hz panel just makes everything feel like absolute butter, so there's no doubt that this phone is going to be a top performer when it comes to speed. Along with that, surprisingly, the phone is already running the latest March security software patch, which actually came in on the 2nd of March, right in line with when my Pixel phone got it. And this is very impressive to say the least, because Samsung has not been known in the past for its super speedy software updates. Whether this stays consistent over the next 6 months or so, I guess time will tell, but for now, it's a very good sign. All that being said, the software experience is still not my flavor of choice. If you're a long-time Samsung user, or even if you're not, then know this: One UI 2.0 is by far and away the best version or skin that Samsung has ever put onto any of their phones. And it's not far away from something I could see myself staying with. The animations are better than ever, the settings menu isn't outrageously complicated, and as I mentioned in my first impressions video, I really appreciate the work that they've done with their always on display implementation and how it seamlessly transitions to and from the lock screen. So there's a lot to like about this software. I also mentioned in that first impressions video that the full screen gestures are excellent with super pleasing animations to go with, and this makes switching from a Pixel device or any device running Android 10 really seamless and easy. So I'm glad Google has forced software developers to make this a uniform option across every single device running Android 10. And on the surface at least, it does feel like there's a lot more flexibility in being able to customize the look and feel of the phone, particularly with the Galaxy theme store and other options found in the settings menu, but it still does have a very Samsung-esque look and feel, and that is highlighted none better than by the home screen. I was chatting to my wife as she was experimenting with using the phone, and she made the harsh but fair comment that it kind of looks like a software experience designed for the elderly, primarily given that we have these huge, colorful icons. And honestly, I kind of have to agree with her. It baffles me that phone manufacturers like Samsung and Google, for some reason, can't give us the option to change 2 little things on our home screens: icon size and icon packs. Now, of course, there are icon packs available on Samsung's own theme store, so you can somewhat customize the icons on your Samsung phone, but there aren't many great icon packs available on the Galaxy theme store, and they all end up offering support for so few apps that your home screen ends up looking like a complete mess. As well as that, I really do not like that I cannot set up the Google Discover page to being on the left of my home screen. Instead, your only option is this Samsung Daily page, which just pales in comparison, and I ended up just switching it off. Now, it is true, Samsung does offer much more flexibility with home screen customization compared to what Google offers on their Pixel phones. You can swap out widgets, you can choose from a list of differing grid sizes, and you can even hide apps, which is seriously amazing. But Google's Pixel launcher is closer to what I prefer in terms of look and feel than what Samsung's home screen launcher is. And so it feels like I have to push Samsung's home screen launcher further than what I do with Google's Pixel launcher. All that being said, is the software experience going to stop me from using this phone indefinitely? No, it's not. I can actually see myself getting quite comfortable with this software experience over an extended amount of time. And I can also see third-party developers coming in and figuring out ways to clean up the home screen experience even more so keep that in mind. But again, for me, it's not a deal breaker. What did surprise me about the performance of this phone though, and not in a good way, is the battery life. Even though it has a 4,500 mAh battery inside compared to the 3,700 mAh cell inside the Pixel 4 XL, I can say with great confidence that in my experience, the battery life on the S20 Plus is no better than the Pixel 4 XL. And in fact, I've actually found it to be slightly worse. Now at launch, the Pixel 4 lineup was pretty woeful, but then some software updates came through that seemed to really lift the battery life of that lineup. Now, with the S20 Plus, we obviously have that higher refresh rate display coming into play, but Samsung obviously also doesn't have access to that same software wizardry that Google does. And what this results in is a phone that will get you at best around 5 hours of screen on time each day, give or take. Some days it's 5.5, some days it's closer to 4, which is what the Pixel 4 XL was like for me at launch as well. So he's hoping Samsung can get on top of it and improve the battery life through some software trickery, because at this point in time, it's a phone that needs charging every single day. And on heavy days where you're downloading lots of apps or taking lots of photos and videos, you may need to even boost it up a couple of times. Now, speaking of taking photos, let's talk cameras on the S20 Plus. Here's the short version. You can take photos using this phone that rival some of the best. I've taken a huge collection of photos with the S20 Plus that I really like the look of. When they're at their best, photos from the main sensor have lots of good punch. They look nice and crisp with good colors, and I've particularly enjoyed taking architecture and landscape shots using the wide angle lens. Even though it's a hair softer than the main sensor, they still look really nice, and it's honestly just a super fun lens to have. That said, I will say that photos taken of people on the S20 Plus do not impress me nearly as much. Often the phone will miss focus if they're moving, or the image will be a little bit soft, or the colors will be a little bit washed out. And if you're trying to take portrait photos using the live focus feature on this phone, then these really don't look that good, in my opinion, at all. The edge detection is not amazing, but even worse than that is the way that it deals with cutting out your subject, which is very harsh and seems very fake looking to me. As well as that, the 64 megapixel telephoto camera is probably the least reliable of the lot. Again, sometimes you do end up with a pretty decent photo, but other times the images from this lens end up looking soft and dark even, and it just doesn't give me a lot of confidence in the images taken using this lens. Night mode photos are still a little bit hit and miss. Sometimes you can get a great photo in low light conditions, other times not so much. So there's still a little bit of work to be done here to get the quality up to Pixel and iPhone level. The video though is super crisp, and in bright, good conditions. The video in terms of quality is only really matched by the iPhone 11 Pro lineup. So if you're someone who likes taking lots of high quality videos using your phone, then I can guarantee you'll be very chuffed with the cameras on this phone. On the other hand, if you want reliably the best photos every single time you take a snap, then this ain't the phone for you. I'll be putting together a full comparison of the cameras on the Pixel 4 XL, the iPhone 11 Pro, and the Galaxy S20 Plus in the coming week or two, so make sure you stay tuned for that if you want a more in-depth comparison. Okay, so let's put a bow on this video and wrap up my review of the S20 Plus. I'll say this, for anyone who buys this phone, you are not going to be disappointed. It delivers just about the best that you can get in all but a few areas, and even in those few areas where it isn't the best, like software and image quality, they're definitely not deal breakers whatsoever. If you're a stock Android enthusiast like myself, then you know the drill, probably best to skip the Galaxy S lineup again this year. But one thing to seriously consider in regards to purchasing this phone is, do you need it right now? If your phone plan is ending just about now and you can upgrade to this phone at little to no extra cost, then definitely it makes sense to upgrade right now. But if you're buying it outright, on the other hand, then it might be worth waiting 6 to 12 months, because at that time, this phone may be close to 50% off its current price point. And at that price, this phone is a no-brainer. But hey, you might also be like me and love getting your hands on the latest and greatest straight away. And if so, I'm not going to stop you. It's your money. You do with it what you will. But that's it for my review of the Galaxy S20 Plus. Hopefully you enjoyed it, or at least found it entertaining, and let me know your thoughts on the S20 lineup down in the comments below. That's it. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.